Hi again guys, and welcome to episode 39 of B-Road Ballers, the review series for Gran Turismo's pretty broad selection of hot hatches, GTIs, RSs, sports, club sports, whatever fancy name the manufacturer happens to give to it, but we cut through that marketing nonsense to find out if they are actually good cars in the game. Some show off visually and don't necessarily live up to it. Others can be completely understated and turn out to be brilliant. Now in this particular episode we're featuring a Spanish hot hatch. It's the only vehicle currently featured on Gran Turismo from a pretty cool automotive manufacturer in my opinion, Seat. Now Seat is of course now owned by Volkswagen, and their performance cars especially are direct DNA relatives of Volkswagen's performance cars, their Polo GTIs, their Golf GTIs. But Seat offers, appropriately from a Spanish company, a little bit more flair, a bit more passion, a bit more charisma to the style of the car, both inside and out. And sometimes they do also drive differently. They're not just Golfs and Lupos and Polos with different bodies. They do actually offer different specs, different performance, different prices, and different values in terms of what they're capable of. So how does this particular Seat compare? Well, the particular Seat that we are discussing has been on Gran Turismo for a while now, and it's the Ibiza Cupra, the older shape model, not the oldest, but an older shape. And it's powered by a 1.8 turbo engine. So a relatively modest engine size. What kind of spec does it get from that engine though? Well, it puts out a pretty decent amount of power, 395 horses, and also just under 300 foot-pounds of torque. It's actually 297. That's pretty good for a 1.8 engine. Now the car is very lightweight. In fact, it is lighter than most of Volkswagen's hot hatches. It weighs 990 kilos, one of the very, very few hot hatches to weigh less than a tonne. That's interesting, and potentially a very good advantage, considering that many of the popular choices weigh a lot more than that, oftentimes 100 or 200 kilos more than that. As far as PP, the car sits at 522, which is perhaps higher than you might expect for a car of its power and for a hot hatch in general. There are of course some which are that high, but I wouldn't personally have guessed that this car would be that high. I would have said maybe 505 or thereabouts. 522 is pretty high for a car that doesn't even have 400 horsepower, so that would indicate that Polyphony at least believes this car is certainly capable of great things, at least to some degree. Or they've just done a whole Red Bull Junior and it's completely wrong. So which one is it? Well, for the price, it would be hard to be a bad deal. This car costs just under 25 grand, and for a hot hatch, especially a newer one, that's a good price. That's around 15 grand cheaper than say an S3 or an Alpha 147, so pretty good value. It's not the cheapest you can get, but it's certainly not expensive. As far as whether or not it lives up to its PP, which I mentioned just now, well, it depends. It's a front-wheel drive hatch, so it knows its limitations, as most front-wheel drive hot hatches do. But, interestingly, the fact that it doesn't necessarily have as much power as you might want it to have isn't necessarily a bad thing, because many hot hatches which have silly amounts of power, such as say the HPA Golf, which does have all-wheel drive to counteract it, but others that don't, such as the Megane RS and Focus ST, tend to be very, very prone to shredding their tyres. And in real-world racing situations, real-world of course, I'm talking in the game, where you're not using pristine racing soft tyres, you're going to get through a set of tyres a lot quicker than you'd want to, especially if you're in an actual race with tyre wear on, say, sports hards against actual human opponents. You're going to be down to zero on your front tyres within a couple of laps if you're putting 700 horsepower out through those front wheels. So having a slightly lesser amount of power and torque isn't necessarily a bad thing in the case of a front-wheel drive car. And compound that with the fact that it's also got hardly any weight to carry in comparison to many of its rivals, and this Seat could actually turn out to be a pretty good all-round hot hatch. So, is it? Well, the straight line performance isn't going to set any records. The top speed is around 180, 190, maybe 200 at a push with shorter gearing, so that you don't have any draft potential. The acceleration is okay, about what you'd expect from 400 horsepower or thereabouts, and the handling is pretty good. It's not necessarily superb. I wouldn't say the handling is as good as, say, the Mini Cooper, which is a phenomenal handling front-wheel drive chassis, but I would say it's definitely better than, say, a Volvo C30. It's a lot better than a Focus ST as far as I'm concerned, and a lot better than the Megane RS, so it's pretty well placed. The fact that the car is also relatively compact certainly helps it a lot, and being so much cheaper than its rivals means that, especially for drivers who don't have a stupid amount of money to spend, can actually potentially get a really good deal. The fact that also it's a Seat, it's the only Seat in the game, is kind of cool, and it's a car which people don't really think of as their go-to model. There are fans of the car, and there are some people who probably use it a lot, but most people don't. Most people tend to go with the crowd and use the popular choices. The Golf Rs, the Scirocco Rs, the Megane RSs, the Focus STs, etc. And although they're not bad cars, give something else a chance for a change. If you're a fan of hot hatches, you probably do try different vehicles, but so many people, too many people, just follow the crowd. So if you're looking for something different, and with some very specific advantages, you might want to check out the Seat Ibiza. But that's it for this particular episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.